everyone and welcome back to my channel and what is going to be a February wrap up. I said I wouldn't do another wrap up after my January one, but I've read less books this month and I've already done a reading vlog for one of the books, so you will be able to hear my thoughts on that. So I thought I would do the one for this month anyway. I'm not going to go in any particular order, but I think I will start with the books that I have physical copies of. So let's start with this one. Sun's beaming a bit on it, but this is Paralyzed Boys by Neil Gaiman. I've been meaning to read this for the longest time. Like I want to say for like 2 years plus, when I set myself the goal of reading like more mythology. I wanted to read, just sort of branch out of reading Greek mythology, so I wanted to focus on something that was from other continents, countries. And Paralyzed Boys is actually a West African mythology. I think a lot of people do say it's from Ghana specifically. So I was like, yes, perfect place to start. And I just had this on my bookshelf for like such a long time, so I was like, let me finally pick it up. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this read. I haven't read anything from Neil Gaiman before. I've seen his name around a lot of the time, and reading this, I can see why he is so popular with like teenagers and like young adults, because it's the kind of book I really would have enjoyed as a young adult. It's really whimsical. It's really like, you just don't know what direction it's going to go in, and I really enjoyed that. And I think just being a teenager, that kind of thing is really fun. Even as an adult now, I really enjoyed it, but I just thought, oh, how nice would this have been if I read it when I was younger. So Paralyzed Boys is about a guy named Fat Charlie. His dad is Anansi the spider, the trickster, and his dad dies. None of this is a spoiler, it's all in the back of the book, and he basically ends up finding out more things about his life. For one, he finds out that his dad is Anansi the trickster, but he also finds out so many other things. And Fat Charlie is actually, like, he lives in London, his dad lives in America, and he has a fiance, and there's not much I can say more about the book without spoiling it, but all I can say is the sort of tricksterness runs in the family, and there is so much more chaos to come for Fat Charlie. What I will say about this book is it's quite nice. It's that sort of exploration of like finding out that his dad is the trickster, and finding out why like all these little jokes that his dad played with him throughout his life was, you know, because of who his dad was. There is also like a sort of mystery element in this book where like the place that Fat Charlie works in, his boss is kind of a crook, and there's a whole sort of mystery element there. So this book takes place in 3 locations, like in London, in Jamaica I want to say, and then also in the US. So it's quite nice to like cross continents and see him and see Neil Gaiman sort of include dialects of the way that people speak. I thought that was quite nice. But yeah, there isn't really much more I can say about the book without spoiling it, but it's just such a treat, because everything that happens, every step of the way, you're just like, oh, okay, so what's going to happen now? And it's just very unexpected, and it's very joyful to read, and yeah, honestly, like, I really liked it. I don't know where next to start with Neil Gaiman. I think this is part of his American Gods sort of series, but it's not really a series. So maybe I will go back to that and see what else is in the series, but this was one I really, really liked. Something else I read was this poetry collection, which is Sacrament of Bodies by Romeo Oregon. This is part of the African Poetry book series. It's actually someone I used to watch on BookTube. I don't think he uploads anymore, but he used to talk about the African book series, and there were just a lot of collections or chapbooks. I don't know if this is, I think there's a technical collection in there, and I was like, oh, I really want to check them out, and I think I had the box set in my Amazon basket for ages and I never bought it. But yeah, so I got this, and this is stunning. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5, and well, I'll come into my reasons for that later, but this is a collection about being a gay man, mainly in Nigeria, and what that's like, that sort of secrecy, the temptation, the societal pressures, family pressures. It's all in here, and it's written so beautifully. Like, Romeo's writing, top tier. There were just so many lines in here that I was underlining because I was like, this is stunning, this is beautiful, and each of the poems basically centre around those themes, and that is also the reason I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, because actually after a while I felt it started to get repetitive, and that is fine, that is fine. That is the theme of the collection. And perhaps, you know, if it was split into, this isn't split into sections, is it? It's just straight, yeah, perhaps if it was split into sections and there were other themes in here, it would have been a 5-star read, but like I said, it was just a bit of repetition. There is no other way I think I can talk about this book or describe it than telling you about the themes. I'll read for you a little bit on the back where it says here, Romeo Oregon fearlessly interrogates how a queer man in Nigeria can heal in a society where everything is designed to prevent such restoration. With honesty, precision, tenderness of detail and a light touch, Oregon explores grief and how the body finds survival through migration. So yeah, I think he ended up migrating to America. So yes, a very, very stunning collection and one that I'm slightly impressed with. I really want to check out some of the other collections in this series. So a book that was a complete surprise to me because I'm trying to get through that stack of books in my other room. I actually have a video where I talked about that stack of books, but then I think I've already said this before, but I edited it and then, well, I filmed it, edited it. Well, maybe I just filmed it and I haven't edited it. But I just forgot about it and I filmed it in the summer and then it just got too late, blah, 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 whatever. But this is one of the books that was on this list, and I got this at London Book Fair, I think, in 2019. This has been on my shelf for a very long time. It was a proof copy. I think at the time Flame Tree Press had just started or maybe expanded to London, I don't know. But they were giving out proof copies. And I took 2 of the proof copies that they were giving out and I've just read them. So I actually had I actually thought I would start reading this and be like, I don't like it and I would DNF it. But actually as I started reading it, I was like, I really like this. So this is The Sky Woman by J.D. Moyer, From Wing Worlds to Earth, An Epic Struggle of Love and Survival. I think this is part of a trilogy, if I'm correct, or at least a 2-part series. And I really want to read the other one because I actually enjoyed this. I had some issues with it, not large issues. So I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. And perhaps it's maybe sitting at a 2.5. But do you know what? I feel like 3 is good, and it's probably 3 because I am surprised at how much I enjoyed it. You know, if I just thought I was going to enjoy it and it ended up being what it was, then it probably would be a 2.5. Now, I'll be honest, this, for a second I thought I was recording, I'll be honest, this book includes some terms and things that I don't really understand, and my boyfriend did explain it to me, but I'm gonna just read the back a little bit so I can explain it to you. So it's about a character named Karen, and it says, a ring station anthropologist. And a ring station, if I'm going to do it in really simple terms, and it's not going to be accurate, so don't come for me if you're a sci-fi person, but I think it's essentially like, I don't want to say planets, but things that sit outside the solar system or sit outside other worlds. Just think of it as a station base, but it's out in space. That's how I'm going to think of it. And yeah, so she basically gets sent to her Earth assignment, and she's watching these people. It says here, she observes a Viking-like village in the Harz Mountains. And as she secretly watches the villagers, she begins to see them more than just research subjects. So we're quickly introduced, well, I'll say quickly, we are introduced initially to 2/3 people that live in that village, and we see it from their perspective, and then we also see it from Karen's perspective. So it like flips between the two. And quite a lot happens in this book. So in the beginning, it's about obviously Karen observing these people, and we get to find out about the sort of technologies that Karen and her team have. But you find out about like the kit she has. She has essentially like an invisibility cloak, which I thought just sounded really cool. Like she's able to like hide her camp essentially, and they have these drones that she can send. The drones look like little flies, and she can send them closer to like the village so that she can spy on the villagers and stuff like that. So it's quite nice like finding out about the technology that she has. And then the sort of villagers are, I think they're based, yeah, it says Viking-like, they're sort of Swedish, Norse, I guess, inspiration there, and they've very much gone back to the very primitive ways of life. You know, they make a lot of like things by hand. So that's quite interesting to see how their way of life is, especially because Karen's life is just so far removed from that. And so what happens, Karen is observing these people, and actually I think at one point she's in a tree or something, and one of the guys, what's his name? Esper, yeah, is a bowsman or something that she actually quite, you know, takes a little liking to. Esper's sister gets taken by some random man whilst they're having like this sort of ceremony. So during this sort of ceremony, the Esper's sister is just stolen by some white-haired man, and it basically begins to sort of search for her. Karen sees this and she sort of follows the man, and obviously Esper also has a brother who's a massive giant, go to look for their sister. And then it just begins an adventure. We find out who the white man is, but except we don't really. And there's a whole nother sort of element to the story with that guy and I guess what he's trying to build. So the story does have many like little side plots which are quite nice. I just felt actually it got like halfway through and it started going in this direction where we were looking at other characters' points of views, and I was just like, hold on, like go back to like interesting parts of like Karen's assignment. Oh, so that was the other thing. Karen has like a mentor, like, you know, like a big boss, and it goes on to the sort of like politics of, like, you know, of how she got the assignment, but also very much starts focusing on this boss Adrian and how he is like trying to get sign off for his adventure and stuff like that. And I was just like, I don't care, like, why are you going off into this side plot of this when there is so much happening on the ground? So I don't know why it did that. Like halfway through it just did that, and it just took up huge chunks of the book, and I was just like, so unnecessary. Like, it'd be fine if you made the book longer and focused on the other stuff, but he didn't. So yeah, I did feel like the book lost its way halfway through. It started wanting to explore all these other things that he picked up, but it was like he hadn't really fully taken us through the like life in the village, days in the village, like just days with Karen as well. It just all became about the action and finding the sister and what the sister was doing and that whole side plot over there. Either way though, I'm still intrigued. I enjoyed this so much more than I thought I was, because like 4 years ago, this Sandra would not be into bloody invisibility camps and cloaks and whatnot. I would just be like, that's nonsense. But I really thoroughly enjoyed this, and I kind of already spoiled what happened to like two of the main characters in here by reading the blurb of the second story, but that's my own fault. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna pick up the second one at some point. So a book that I listened to is Murder in the Museum by Simon Brett. This is actually a re-listen for me. Originally when I listened to this book, I gave it 3 stars. This time around I gave it 2 stars. I just felt like a lot of the books with Simon Brett's books, actually let me explain to you the plot before I just go into this is what I felt about the story. Murder in the Museum is, I can't remember what number it is in the series of the Feathering Misty series, but a skeleton, is unearthed in a local museum, a museum dedicated to this like writer and his Catholic family and whatnot. And what this book is a huge information dump of Catholicism, and when Catholics are banned and priests were like coming around to people's houses and giving secret prayers and whatever they do and communions and whatnot. Life about like, well, I guess it's being like a literary person or someone who writes a poem, one poem that's super famous and then never goes anywhere. So this skeleton is unearthed in the museum, and Carol, who is one of our 2 amateur sleuths, is a trustee at this place called Brackets, which is the museum. So she's there when it is unearthed, and her friend Jude, as per usual in the series, are like, this is murder. How are we going to find what happened? And they basically start, you know, obviously talking to people, questioning people and whatnot, and trying to find out what really happened to this body. I think this one is quite more interesting than some of his other books in that some of the other cases they tackle, in the sense that the skeleton, like usually they're looking at just a dead body, but this time they're looking at a skeleton, so this is clearly a murder that's happened a very long time ago. And so I'm actually quite surprised that they were able to solve it, but that's beside the point. This book really highlights how, and he does this sometimes in his other books, it highlights how a lot of the information is just given to them to allow the story to pass on, and it never feels very natural. Some of the things that people were saying to them, I'm just like, people just wouldn't readily, openly give you that information, especially if they think it's going to make them look bad or they're trying to cover something up. It makes no sense. I think one of the things that Poirot has, you know, is like, you know, if you just allow people to talk, they will expose themselves. And I get that, but I think Poirot also does it in a way where he just asks really like random questions and people start responding to that. These are asking the direct questions, you know, or like they're near about it, and the people are still like, bah, 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 and I'm just like, what? But yeah, honestly, I wish I could tell you more about the story, but this book was just, I will give him credit for this. But he's managed to create a whole persona for this guy who wrote this poem and his family and all these sorts of things. And I think that's quite nice because it's a story within a story. It's about a guy named Esmond Chadley. As far as I know, he's not a real person. I've never actually Googled it, but I'm just assuming he's not. But you know, he created this whole thing about his life, and then, you know, what, 50, 40 years, no, 50, 60 years later, there's this trustee and stuff like that. It's probably a lot longer than that, but you know, we have this actual story that we're reading. So I thought that was quite nice, but in terms of the actual mystery in the story, it was just kind of dull, kind of boring. There was so much about Esmond Chadley and being Catholic and the war and these letters, and I was not here for it. I was just like, this book is actually quite boring. Why did I give it 3 stars in the beginning? So there's that one. I feel like I explained that one really badly, but honestly, you're actually not missing out. The other book that I read in February, which should be 2 weeks, felt like a lifetime, I'm not gonna lie, is To Paralyzed by Hanya Yanagihara. I have already done a reading vlog about this and it is up on my channel, so I will just direct you to there so you can hear my full thoughts. But I gave this 3 stars on Goodreads, but really it is a 2.5 star read for me, but you can find out why. I'll link it up here. Who knows where this thing will be? I think it's going to be here. And then you can hear my thoughts on it. So the final book that I listened to, I think it was the final audiobook of February. It was, because I think I finished it on the last day of the month, is Curtain, like Poirot's Last Case by Agatha Christie. Do you know what? This was a 3-star read for me on Goodreads, and maybe it's also a 2.5 star for me. It wasn't the best. It wasn't the best Christie. And I think a lot of the reason why it wasn't the best is because a lot of the excitement takes place after, in the form of a letter, and you're not there in the action, and a lot of it just feels very rambly. So, in Poirot's Last Case, we are back at Hastings, which is so nice. Actually, a few facts about this book though, because either I had this from the podcast or I was just doing a bit of research, but this, like, Poirot is like the only fictional character ever to have like an obituary. I think it's in the New York Times, and also the fact that this book was like sealed in a vault, so I think it was like after she died it published, but it very much sealed in a vault. And no, I think it published just before she died, and then the Miss Marple one published after she died. But essentially, like, you know, she'd already written this book many years before, and then it was published like way after it was written. So just 2 little interesting tidbits about that. But Curtain is Poirot's Last Case, and it opens with Hastings, and it was just so nice to have Hastings back again, narrating the story. And he is called back to Styles, and Styles is where Poirot and Hastings first met, I think. Yes, for sure, and it's also where they had their first case. So that was quite nice. Styles has changed considerably from what it was when they first went there. And Hastings gets there, and Hastings has been married, he has 3 kids, and one of his daughters is actually at Styles. She is a scientist, and she's helping like the lead scientist on the case. And Poirot is also there. Poirot has had a bout of ill health. When Hastings sees him, he's like, you know, he just looks so unwell, he can't believe like that's his friend, etc, etc. So it's like, oh, poor Poirot, he's like all ill, and he's had like several heart attacks and whatnot, and it's just very sad. But he sits there and says to Hastings, you know, there is someone here who has committed like over 5 murders. I think, maybe I didn't read it too closely actually, because the person hasn't actually committed those murders. They have been the instigator of some of them. And they sort of talk through like past cases, or not past cases, the past cases of the one that this person has committed. And we're introduced to these cast of people. I think there's about 5 or 6 of them. And you're basically trying to work out who done it. The way I've always read Poirot is I've never tried to figure out who's done it. I just quite like that element a bit, but this one I was like, oh, I'm gonna actually like try and figure it out. And also because, well, this isn't really influenced because I'd listened to a couple of them and not taken this on board. But in the All About Agatha podcast, I think they have someone who's close to the show says something like, you know, he hates the fact that some people can be passive readers about like crime or thriller stuff and not try and figure out what's happening. He's like, that's not the way you're supposed to read these books. I'm just there like, that's the way I like to read them. But yeah, so I did try and figure it out. And you know, you're introduced to a whole host of characters, and really it could be any one of these people. Like a lot of these people have motive for like killing someone there at least. So you're just thinking, oh, could it be them? Could it be them? Could it be them? Honestly, right, at one point I was like, maybe what Agatha Christie has done is she's had Poirot solve all these crimes, and actually Poirot is a mastermind murderer himself. And this is not a spoiler, it's not Poirot. I thought it might be Hastings' daughter, who knows. But, so essentially there are a couple of people. There is the couple that runs the place at Styles now. The woman, they say she has a tongue like vinegar. She's very sharp with her husband and, you know, embarrasses him a lot, especially in front of people. There is an incident where her husband goes to like get some drinks with people, and she's like, what are you doing? Blah, 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 blah. And like, you know, she's very loud about it. Everyone can hear. She takes a drink from him and is like, no, you're not serving this to people. And so, you know, there's a bit of a motive there. There is a sort of smug major or something who's really interested in Hastings' daughter. And Hastings really doesn't like him. There are basically multiple people here that have multiple reasons to like kill some of the people there, you know, through some things that happen throughout the course of the novel. And you're essentially trying to find out who's the person that's going to kill someone, like who's going to be dead in the end. There ends up being 2 deaths, and because they're quite different people, you're just like, who would have a motive to kill like 2 of these people? I can't really tell you more than that because that would be spoiling the mystery for you, but Hastings is also involved in a really crucial plot, and it's a very interesting case of mind games, and I think that's what this book is very much about. So that's why I said it's not perhaps always the person who actually kills the person, it's how they instigate that. But a lot of mind games goes on to this, and it really is the person you least expect. At one point I did know who it was, but it was like way late in the novel where I was like, perhaps I suppose I should know. But it wasn't who you expected it to be, because it's always the unexpected. I say that, it's not always, but in this case it really was an unexpected person. And it was interesting in that sense. It was interesting in the sense that it wasn't about just like full-on murder, because we do see people commit crimes, and you know, they're accidental, but you think, oh, actually, is it you then? But actually then it ends up not being them. So it's a very interesting one about mind games and how you can convince people to do other things. And I think in a lot of cases of the crimes that have been described, the victims of those crimes feel like they've committed it, but actually they haven't. They've been driven to do it. So that's the angle for this book, and can't really go much into detail about it without explaining that. But yeah, Poirot passes away. It's very sad. We get a lot of the action up until Poirot passes away. We're actually there, and then once that happens, it's obviously the funeral, and then Hastings gets a letter from Poirot essentially detailing out everything that's happened. One thing I will say in this book is Poirot is very, very sharp with Hastings. It's very horrible to see, especially knowing what he was about to do. I just think it could have been nicer to your friend. And yeah, he, you know, as usual, Hastings is still a buffoon. He's not picking up all the hints and stuff like that despite all his time with Poirot, which I think is quite sad to see, because I feel like perhaps he should have been able to solve this final case, but it was quite hard. And yeah, that's the book. Poirot dies. It's pretty anticlimactic, if I'm going to be honest, but you're kind of unsure about the circumstances of death. But yeah, let's find a book. So I don't know what I'm going to do with myself now that I've finished Poirot. But that is it for my February wrap up. Let me know what books you guys have been reading, and let me know what you're planning to read in March. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll catch you in another one. Bye.